My name is Alexandra Hayes, and I've spent 29 years being invisible in a family obsessed with political connections. The Hayes family wasn't politically powerful, but we were politically adjacent, which in my father's mind was almost as good. Dad, Thomas Hayes, worked as a legislative aide to a congressman, not an important congressman, not a powerful one, just someone who'd held the same safe district seat for 20 years. But that job gave Dad access to the periphery of state politics, and he leveraged that access into an entire identity. Mom, Patricia Hayes, was a government relations consultant for a mid-sized lobbying firm. She worked on unglamorous campaigns, municipal bonds, zoning regulations, state education funding. But she knew people who knew people, and that was enough to make her feel important. My older cousin Rachel understood the family game perfectly. She was beautiful, charming, and had spent her 20s strategically dating men with the right last names, the right connections, the right career trajectories. She worked as a communications director for a state representative, basically writing press releases and managing social media, but the job gave her access to political events and influential circles. 6 months ago, Rachel started dating Senator Michael Brennan, a rising star in state politics. Young, handsome, from a family with money and influence, positioning himself for a congressional run. My parents acted like Rachel had won the lottery. This could change everything for our family, Mom said when Rachel announced the relationship. Senator Brennan knows everyone. His family knows everyone. If Rachel plays this right, the connections could be incredible. Then there was me. I'd never fit into the Hayes family's political ambitions. While Rachel networked at fundraisers, I studied international relations and public policy. While my parents cultivated relationships with minor political figures, I joined the State Department right out of grad school. The State Department. Dad said when I told him about my job offer. That's fine, I suppose. But it's not very visible, is it? You'll be one of thousands of bureaucrats. I'll be working on international economic policy, I replied. Still. Rachel works directly with elected officials. That's real political work. What you're describing sounds like paperwork. I took the job anyway. Started as a Foreign Service officer working on trade negotiations. Traveled constantly, Geneva, Brussels, Beijing, Tokyo. Built expertise in international economic relations and diplomatic protocol. While my family thought I was pushing papers in some anonymous government office, I was actually negotiating with foreign officials and advising senior diplomats. My career progressed quietly. I became a senior Foreign Service officer at 26, specializing in Asia-Pacific economic policy. Then deputy director of the Office of Economic Policy Analysis. The work was fascinating, important, and completely invisible to people outside government. My family had no idea what I actually did. Still at the State Department. Mom would ask occasionally. Still there. That's nice, dear. Very stable. Rachel just got promoted to Senior Communications Director. She's managing a team now. Good for Rachel. At family gatherings, the conversation always centered on political gossip. Who was running for what office, which campaigns were struggling, what legislation might pass. Rachel held court, sharing insider details about her work. My parents contributed their own periphery knowledge, name-dropping people they'd met at events. I stayed quiet. What was I supposed to say? That I'd spent last month in Seoul negotiating semiconductor trade agreements? That I'd briefed the Deputy Secretary of State on Chinese economic policy? That my analysis was cited in congressional testimony? They wouldn't have understood, and honestly, I was too tired to translate my work into terms they'd care about. The exclusions started subtly. Political fundraisers where I wouldn't know anyone. Dinner parties where the guest list was all political insiders. Family gatherings where Rachel's political connections were the main event and my presence was just unnecessary. I stopped expecting to be included. I focused on my work instead. What my family didn't know was that my career had taken a significant turn 8 months ago. While my family cultivated relationships with minor political figures, I was working at the highest levels of state and federal government. My expertise in international economic policy had caught the attention of people who actually mattered. After successfully negotiating a major trade agreement that strengthened US-Japan semiconductor cooperation, I was recruited to join the governor's office as Senior Policy Advisor for Economic Development. Governor Catherine Morrison was a pragmatic, brilliant leader who'd been in office for 3 years and was positioning herself as a national figure. She needed someone who understood both international economics and domestic policy implications, someone who could help position our state as a leader in technology, manufacturing, and international trade. That someone was me. I joined her team 6 months ago. My official title was Senior Policy Advisor, but my actual role was much more significant. I was one of 5 people in the governor's inner circle. I attended senior staff meetings every morning. I briefed her personally on economic issues. I drafted major policy proposals and represented her office in negotiations with corporate executives considering major investments in our state. I was working 70-hour weeks, traveling between the state capital and Washington, D.C., managing relationships with Fortune 500 CEOs and foreign trade delegations. My office was 3 doors down from the governor's. My annual salary was $185,000, which didn't sound like much compared to private sector executive salaries, but was substantial for government work. More importantly, I had influence. Real influence. When I wrote policy memos, they shaped the governor's decisions. When I reached out to corporate leaders about relocating to our state, they took my calls. When I attended events with the governor, I wasn't just an aide, I was an advisor whose opinion she genuinely valued. But I still lived in a modest townhouse. Still drove a practical Subaru. Still wore conservative suits appropriate for government work. By my family's metrics, which involved visibility, political celebrity, and proximity to elected officials they'd heard of, I was still just a government bureaucrat. I didn't correct their assumptions. I was too busy working to care what they thought, and frankly, their blindness was revealing. They valued proximity to power over actual power. They cared about knowing senators' names, not understanding what senators actually did. Rachel's relationship with Senator Brennan became the family's central narrative. Every dinner conversation involved updates about their relationship, the political events they attended, the important people they'd met. Michael is taking Rachel to the governor's economic summit next month, Mom announced at a family dinner in October. Can you imagine? The governor will be there. All the major political players in the state. I almost laughed. I was organizing the governor's economic summit. I'd personally selected which corporate executives would be invited, which economic development proposals would be presented, and which media outlets would cover it. Senator Brennan was attending because junior legislators were required to attend. He wasn't a VIP, he was part of the crowd. But I said nothing. That's exciting for Rachel, I replied. You could never get access to events like that, Mom said without malice, just stating what she believed was fact. Those summits are for senior people. Political insiders. People with real influence. Probably, I agreed. The breaking point came 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. The call came on a Tuesday evening in early November while I was working late at the governor's office. Alex, honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving, Dad said. His voice had that careful tone people use when delivering news they know won't be received well. Okay. The thing is, this Thanksgiving is very important for the family. Rachel is bringing Michael, Senator Brennan, and his family to our Thanksgiving dinner. His parents will be there, his younger sister, some family friends who are major donors to his campaign. That sounds nice. It is nice. It's wonderful, actually. This is a real opportunity for our family to make connections with the Brennan family. They're extremely well connected. Old political family, serious money, influence across the state. I waited for the other shoe to drop. The thing is, Michael's family is very discerning. They care about appearances, about who's in the room, about the quality of conversation. They expect a certain caliber of gathering. Dad, are you uninviting me from Thanksgiving? Not uninviting, exactly. Just suggesting that maybe you'd be more comfortable elsewhere this year. You don't really know these people. You don't work in politics the way Rachel does. You'd probably feel out of place. I work for the government. Yes, but it's not the same as working directly in politics, honey. You're not going to have anything to contribute to the conversations. Senator Brennan will want to talk about legislation, campaigns, political strategy. His parents will want to discuss political connections and upcoming elections. What would you even say? The irony was stunning. I'd spent the morning briefing the governor on legislative strategy for her economic development package. Yesterday, I'd had lunch with 2 state senators to discuss their support for manufacturing incentives. Last week, I'd attended a meeting where Senator Brennan presented his proposals for technology sector growth, proposals I'd privately assessed as poorly researched and economically naive. But my father thought I'd have nothing to contribute to political conversations. I understand, I said calmly. You do? Oh good. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. Your mother and I will take you to dinner the following week, just us. Something nice. Sure, Dad. And Alex? This isn't personal. It's just that this is a very important opportunity for Rachel. For the whole family, really. We need to make the right impression. I understand completely. After I hung up, I sat in my office looking out at the state capitol building, its dome illuminated against the November sky. My office walls were covered with photos from trade delegations, signed letters from foreign officials, a commendation from the Deputy Secretary of State. On my desk was my schedule for Thanksgiving week. Most government offices would be closed, but senior staff members were always working. The governor had asked if I'd join her for Thanksgiving dinner, something she did every year with staff members who didn't have family obligations or who wanted to avoid family obligations. It's just me, my husband, and usually 3 or 4 senior staff members, she'd said when she invited me. Very casual. Good food, better wine, and absolutely no political shop talk unless someone brings it up organically. More importantly, no one's parents trying to impress anyone. I'd tentatively accepted, thinking I might try to do both, quick appearance with family, then dinner with the governor. But now my family had uninvited me, which simplified things considerably. The universe, once again, had a sense of humor. I called the governor's personal assistant. Diane, it's Alex. Tell the governor I'm definitely coming to Thanksgiving dinner. Family plans fell through. She'll be glad to hear it, Diane replied. She mentioned she wanted to discuss the semiconductor proposal with you anyway. You know Catherine, even on holidays, she's working. That evening, I checked my email and saw a message from Governor Morrison's chief of staff. Subject: Thanksgiving evening plans. Alex, Governor Morrison will be hosting Thanksgiving dinner at the River House at 7 p.m. Very small group, very casual. Senator Chen will be joining us, his family is in California, along with Deputy Chief of Staff Karen Williams and State Economic Development Director Tom Rodriguez. The governor mentioned you might want to bring a guest if you have someone you're seeing. I smiled at the email. The River House was the most exclusive restaurant in the city, a private establishment where the state's most powerful figures dined when they wanted privacy. Senator James Chen was the longest-serving and most influential state senator, chair of the Appropriations Committee. Tom Rodriguez ran our state's economic development agency and had successfully attracted billions in corporate investment. This wasn't a sad Thanksgiving dinner for lonely staff members. This was the governor's inner circle. I replied confirming my attendance, alone. 3 days later, I received a follow-up email from Diane. Alex, FYI, we've booked the governor's private dining room at the River House for Thanksgiving. Completely separate from the main restaurant. Security will be tight since the governor will be there for several hours. Let me know if you need anything. The River House had a main dining room that required reservations months in advance and a private dining room that was invitation only, typically used by governors, senators, and occasionally the state's wealthiest families when they wanted absolute privacy. On Wednesday before Thanksgiving, Mom called. Just wanted to confirm you're okay with skipping tomorrow, she said. Rachel asked if you'd be upset. I'm fine, Mom. I have other plans. Oh good. What will you do? Order takeout and watch movies. She said this with sympathy, like I was facing a sad holiday alone. Actually, I'm having dinner with some colleagues. Should be nice. That's good, honey. At least you'll have company. We'll make it up to you next month, okay? Sure, Mom. I hung up and returned to preparing briefing materials. The governor wanted to discuss economic development strategy over dinner, and I wanted to be ready. Thanksgiving morning arrived with cold clarity. I woke up in my townhouse, went for a run, and spent the afternoon reviewing policy documents. Around 3 p.m., I started getting ready for dinner. I chose carefully, A sophisticated dress, elegant but not flashy, the kind of thing you wear when dining with the governor. Understated jewelry. Professional but polished. At 5 p.m., I received a text from Rachel that had clearly been sent to multiple people. Rachel, so excited for tonight. Senator Brennan and his family are coming to Mom and Dad's at 5 for cocktails. Then Dad is taking Michael and his father to the River House at 7 for dinner to continue conversations. This is such an amazing opportunity for our family. Party popper. I read the text twice, and then laughed out loud. My father was taking Senator Brennan and his father to the River House. The same restaurant where I'd be dining with the governor in the private dining room. The universe's sense of humor was becoming absolutely poetic. I texted back, "Have a wonderful Thanksgiving." At 6:30, I drove to the River House. The restaurant was in a historic building overlooking the river, with valet parking and security that screened everyone entering. I'd been here twice before with the governor for working dinners, so the staff recognized me. "Ms. Hayes, good evening," the maitre d' said. "The governor's party is in the private dining room. Let me escort you." The private dining room was accessed through a separate entrance from the main restaurant. You wouldn't even know it existed unless you'd been invited. 6 people could dine there comfortably, 8 if needed, in complete privacy with dedicated staff. Governor Catherine Morrison was already there, along with Senator Chen and Tom Rodriguez. The governor stood when I entered, a gracious gesture she always made, and smiled warmly. "Alex. Happy Thanksgiving." She hugged me like an old friend, which in many ways, she'd become over the past 6 months. "I'm so glad you could make it. You know Senator Chen and Tom?" "Of course. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone." We settled in as Karen Williams, the Deputy Chief of Staff, arrived. 5 of us total, the core leadership team from the governor's office, plus Senator Chen, who was probably the most powerful legislator in the state. "Before we start," Governor Morrison said, "I promised this would be low-key and mostly non-work. But I do want to spend about 20 minutes discussing the semiconductor proposal since we're all here. Then we eat, drink, and enjoy not being at our desks." Fair. Everyone agreed. We spent 20 minutes discussing strategy for attracting a major semiconductor manufacturer to our state, a deal worth approximately $4.2 billion in investment and 8,000 jobs. I presented my analysis of the company's requirements, the incentives we'd need to offer, and the timeline for negotiations. "This is exactly why I wanted you on my team," the governor said after my presentation. "You understand both the international economic implications and the domestic political realities. That combination is rare." Senator Chen nodded. "Your briefing last month on Asian technology markets was the best analysis I've seen from any advisor. The governor's lucky to have you." At 7:15, while we were enjoying appetizers and the conversation had shifted to non-work topics, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Rachel, at the River House now. This place is incredible. Dad is so nervous. Michael's dad is very intimidating. Wish us luck." They were in the main dining room. I was literally in the next room, separated by walls and a private entrance, dining with the governor. "Everything okay?" Governor Morrison asked, noticing my expression. "Just family drama," I replied. "Nothing urgent." "Say no more. Families and holidays." She raised her glass. "To chosen family, the people who actually appreciate us." We all drank to that. Dinner was extraordinary, both the food and the conversation. We discussed everything from international trade policy to favorite books to the governor's upcoming initiatives. Catherine Morrison was brilliant, funny, and genuinely interested in everyone at the table. This wasn't a formal political dinner, it was a group of people who respected each other enjoying an evening together. Around 8:30, after we'd finished the main course and were waiting for dessert, Governor Morrison's personal security detail chief approached our table quietly. Apologies for the interruption. There's a situation in the main dining room that might require your attention." The governor's expression shifted instantly from relaxed to alert. "What kind of situation?" "Nothing serious. Senator Brennan is dining with his father and another man. Apparently, the man, Thomas Hayes, has been name-dropping you repeatedly to impress Senator Brennan's father. He just loudly claimed that he's very close to the governor, and could arrange a meeting if they were interested. The restaurant manager wanted to check if that's true before addressing it." I felt my face flush. Tom Rodriguez noticed and smiled slightly, having clearly picked up on my last name matching the one the security chief had mentioned. Governor Morrison looked at me. Alex, any relation? That would be my father, I said quietly. I should probably mention, my family uninvited me from Thanksgiving because they wanted to impress Senator Brennan and his family. They thought I didn't have the political connections to contribute to the conversation. The table went silent for a moment. Then Senator Chen started laughing, a genuine, delighted laugh. You're kidding, he said. I'm really not. They literally uninvited me because my cousin is dating Senator Brennan and they wanted to make a good impression. Governor Morrison's expression was priceless, a mixture of disbelief and amusement. Senator Brennan. The junior senator who's been in office for 18 months. That's the one. And your family thinks dating him is more impressive than being senior policy advisor to the governor. They think I'm a mid-level bureaucrat who pushes papers. They have no idea what I actually do. Tom Rodriguez was grinning. This is the best Thanksgiving story I've heard in years. Governor Morrison looked at her security chief. Here's what we're going to do. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to walk through the main dining room on my way to the restroom. I'll stop at whatever table Senator Brennan is at, say hello because it would be rude not to, and we'll see what happens. Alex, feel free to join me. Governor, you don't have to. Oh, I absolutely do. This is too perfect. Besides, if your father is claiming to be close to me, I should probably set the record straight. Can't have people misrepresenting their relationships with the governor's office. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. 5 minutes later, Governor Morrison stood up. Alex, walk with me. We left the private dining room through the main entrance. The main dining room of the River House was elegant. White tablecloths, dim lighting, quiet conversations. It took me about 3 seconds to spot my family's table. Dad, Senator Brennan, and a man I assumed was Senator Brennan's father sat at a prominent table near the center of the room. They appeared to be deep in conversation. Dad was animated, clearly trying to impress. As we walked past their table, Senator Brennan looked up and his face showed immediate recognition of the governor. He started to stand. Governor Morrison, he said, slightly too loud. What a pleasant surprise. Governor Morrison stopped, her security detail positioning themselves discreetly nearby. Senator Brennan. Happy Thanksgiving. I didn't know you dined here. I'm here with my father, Patrick Brennan, and Thomas Hayes. He gestured to the table. Dad's face showed pure pride at being introduced to the governor. Mr. Brennan, nice to meet you, the governor said, shaking his hand. Then she turned to my father. Thomas Hayes. I don't believe we've met. Dad stood up, practically trembling with excitement. Governor Morrison, this is such an honor. I've been telling Patrick about the tremendous work your administration is doing. I work in government myself, legislative aide to Congressman Wilson, and I follow your initiatives very closely. That's kind of you, the governor said pleasantly. Then she turned to me. Oh, I should introduce my senior policy advisor. Alex, you know Senator Brennan, of course. I stepped forward, and the color drained from my father's face. Alexandra, he whispered. Hi, Dad. Happy Thanksgiving. Senator Brennan looked confused, glancing between me and my father. You two know each other. Alex is my daughter, Dad said weakly. Governor Morrison's expression was perfectly innocent. Oh, what a lovely coincidence. Alex is one of my most valuable advisors. She's been instrumental in our economic development initiatives. Actually, we were just having dinner in the private room discussing the semiconductor deal. Senator Chen is joining us. You remember Senator Chen, Senator Brennan? Senator Brennan nodded, looking slightly pale. Everyone in state politics knew that Senator Chen was the most powerful legislator in the Capitol. Patrick Brennan, Senator Brennan's father, looked at me with new interest. Your senior policy advisor? My son mentioned that position. Quite influential, from what I understand. I try to be useful, I said modestly. Dad still looked like he was experiencing an out-of-body experience. You work for Governor Morrison? For the past 6 months, yes. Before that, I was at the State Department working on international trade policy. Governor Morrison smiled warmly. Alex joined my team after successfully negotiating a major semiconductor trade agreement with Japan. She's exactly the kind of talent we need in state government. I'm grateful every day that she chose to work with us. Alexandra works for you, Dad repeated, as if saying it again might make it make sense. She certainly does. In fact, we just finished discussing strategy for attracting a $4 billion manufacturing investment to our state. Alex's expertise in international economics has been crucial to that effort. The governor paused. Thomas, you mentioned you work for Congressman Wilson? How long have you been in his office? 19 years, Dad said automatically, still processing. That's admirable longevity. And you mentioned following our initiatives closely. Dad nodded, unable to form words. Then you've probably seen Alex's work, though you might not have known it was hers. She authored our state technology strategy, our international trade framework, and most of the policy briefings I give to the legislature on economic issues. Senator Brennan was now looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I attended the governor's economic summit last month. Was that? Alex organized that entire event, Governor Morrison confirmed. Selected the speakers, coordinated with corporate executives, managed all the policy discussions. It was exceptionally well done. I didn't realize, Senator Brennan said. Most people don't realize how much work happens behind the scenes, the governor said graciously. That's the nature of good staff work, it's invisible when done well. She looked at me fondly. Though Alex won't be invisible for long. Senator Chen and I have been discussing recommending her for Deputy Chief of Staff when Karen retires next year. Can't let someone with her talent and expertise stay in an advisor role forever. My father's face had gone from pale to ashen. Patrick Brennan was now looking at his son with an expression that clearly said, "Why didn't you mention this?" Well, we should get back to our dinner, Governor Morrison said. Tom and Senator Chen will wonder what happened to us. Thomas, it was nice to finally meet you. Senator Brennan, we'll see you at the legislative session in January. Alex has prepared some excellent briefing materials on the bills your committee will be reviewing. As we walked away, I heard Patrick Brennan's voice, quiet but clearly audible. Your girlfriend's cousin works for the governor, and you didn't mention it? Michael, that's the kind of connection that actually matters. Governor Morrison waited until we were back in the private dining room before she started laughing. Alex, that was the most satisfying thing I've done all week. Your father's face. Senator Chen grinned. What happened? Her family uninvited her from Thanksgiving to impress Senator Brennan's family. Her father was literally name-dropping Catherine when we walked past. Then Catherine introduced Alex as her senior policy advisor. Tom Rodriguez raised his glass. To Alexandra Hayes, the most underestimated woman in state government. Your family's loss is absolutely our gain. We all drank to that. My phone started buzzing incessantly. I silenced it without looking. We finished dinner around 10 p.m. The governor insisted I take home leftovers. You didn't get Thanksgiving with your family, at least take some turkey home, and gave me a genuine hug as we left. I meant what I said about the Deputy Chief of Staff role, she said quietly. You're ready for it, and I need someone I trust in that position. Think about it. I will. Thank you, Governor. And Alex? Don't let your family's blindness diminish what you've accomplished. You've earned every bit of respect you receive in this office. I drove home with a container of Thanksgiving leftovers and approximately 6 to 7 text messages waiting for me. Dad, Alexandra, we need to talk. Immediately. Mom, your father just called me hysterical. He says you work for the governor? Why wouldn't you tell us? Rachel, Alex, what the fuck? Michael's dad is asking why we never mentioned you work for the governor. This is so humiliating. Dad, you let us think you were a nobody. A paper pusher. Some mid-level bureaucrat. Dad, do you know what I said to Patrick Brennan? I told him I had connections to the governor's office. I said I could arrange meetings. And the entire time, my own daughter works directly for her? Mom, everyone is calling. Your aunt, your uncle, everyone wants to know why we didn't know you were the governor's advisor. Rachel, Michael is furious with me. He says I should have known my own cousin worked in the governor's office. He's embarrassed because his dad is disappointed we didn't mention this connection. Rachel, did you do this on purpose? Did you deliberately not tell us so you could humiliate us? Dad, we need to have a family meeting. This is unacceptable. You made us look like fools in front of the Brennans. I read through all the messages and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a calm recognition that they'd finally seen the truth and, predictably, were making it about their embarrassment rather than their misjudgment. I typed a single message to the family group chat. Alex, I'm the same person I've always been. Same job I've had for 6 months, same career trajectory I've been on for years. The only thing that changed tonight is that you finally saw it. We can talk when you're ready to have an honest conversation about why you never bothered to ask what I actually do for work. Until then, I need to prepare for next week's legislative briefings. Happy Thanksgiving. Then I muted the conversation and ate leftover turkey while reviewing policy documents. The next morning, I received a call from Senator Chen's office. Ms. Hayes, Senator Chen asked me to reach out. He wanted to extend an invitation to join him for coffee next week. He's interested in discussing your role in the governor's office and potentially collaborating on some legislative initiatives. Senator Chen was the most powerful legislator in the state. An invitation to coffee was significant. I'd be honored, I replied. Please let me know when works for his schedule. 30 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Dad stood on my doorstep looking like he hadn't slept. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I let him in. We sat in my living room, modest, comfortable, nothing impressive by my family's standards. Dad looked around like he was seeing it for the first time, which in a way, he was. I've spent the past 12 hours thinking about everything, he said. About how we've treated you. How I've treated you. And Alexandra, I'm ashamed. I waited. I dismissed your career for years. I thought you were just drifting. Working some anonymous government job that didn't matter. I actually felt sorry for you. Can you believe that? I felt sorry for you while you were advising the governor. I know, Dad. And when Rachel started dating Michael, all I could think about was the connections. The opportunity. The doors that might open for our family if we impressed his family. So when I uninvited you from Thanksgiving. His voice broke. I uninvited you because I thought you'd make us look bad. I thought you were the least successful person in the family and having you there would hurt our chances of impressing the Brennans. I know that too. But Alexandra, you're the most successful person in our family. You're the one with actual power, actual influence. And I couldn't see it because I was too busy looking at the wrong metrics. He put his head in his hands. Patrick Brennan called me this morning, Dad continued. Do you know what he said? He said, your daughter has more influence in this state than my son does, and you didn't even know it. That tells me everything I need to know about your judgment. Then he hung up. I'm sorry that happened. Don't apologize. I earned it. Alexandra, why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were nobody? Because you never asked, Dad. Not once in 6 months did you ask me what I actually do for work. You never asked about my responsibilities, my projects, my career goals. You assumed I was unsuccessful because I don't live in a mansion or drive a luxury car. And I was too busy doing actual meaningful work to care about correcting your assumptions. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth of it. Can we fix this? He asked. Is there a way to fix our relationship? Maybe. But it requires you to fundamentally change how you think about success. To value substance over visibility. To recognize that real power and real achievement often don't look like what you expect them to look like. I want to try. Then we start there. The Friday after Thanksgiving, I had coffee with Senator Chen. He wanted to discuss collaborating on economic development legislation and asked if I'd be willing to testify before his committee on trade policy. The governor speaks highly of you, he said. And after meeting you last night, I can see why. You understand both the policy substance and the political realities. That's rare, especially in someone your age. Thank you, Senator. I also heard about your family situation. He smiled slightly. Politics is full of people who value proximity to power over actual competence. Your family made a common mistake. They confused access with influence. They did. For what it's worth, you handled it with remarkable grace. You could have been petty about it. Instead, you were professional, even kind to your father when the governor introduced you. Being petty wouldn't have served anyone. No, it wouldn't have. But it would have been understandable. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. I'm glad you're working with Catherine. She needs more advisors like you, people who do the work without needing the recognition. Over the following weeks, my relationship with my family slowly began to rebuild. Mom called and apologized, genuinely this time. I've spent years working in government relations, she said, and I didn't recognize what you were doing because it wasn't the kind of government work I understood. That's my failure, not yours. Rachel and I met for lunch. She was embarrassed. Her relationship with Senator Brennan had cooled after the Thanksgiving incident, largely because his family was disappointed in her lack of awareness about her own family's connections. I thought dating Michael was the biggest achievement, she said. I thought that was success. But you've actually built something real, and I was too blind to see it. Rachel, your life is your life. I'm not judging your choices. But I judged yours. For years. And I was wrong about all of it. Then learn from it. That's all any of us can do. 3 months later, Governor Morrison formally offered me the Deputy Chief of Staff position. I accepted. The announcement made state news, not major headlines, but enough that people in political circles knew about my promotion. My family sent congratulations that felt genuine for the first time. Dad and I had dinner once a month, slowly rebuilding our relationship. He'd stopped name-dropping and started asking real questions about my work. He'd stopped trying to impress me with his political connections and started recognizing that my connections were actually more substantial than his. At one dinner, 6 months after Thanksgiving, he said something that stuck with me. I spent 20 years working in politics, thinking I was close to power because I worked for a congressman. But I was never in the room where decisions were made. You're in that room every day, and it took me far too long to understand the difference. The difference doesn't make you less valuable, Dad. We just have different roles. But I treated you like your role didn't matter. Like you didn't matter. And that was wrong. It was the most honest he'd ever been with me. A year after that Thanksgiving, I was at another governor's event, a major economic development announcement involving the semiconductor deal we'd been working on. $4 billion in investment, 8,000 jobs, a transformational project for our state. Governor Morrison gave a speech crediting her team, and specifically mentioned me by name. None of this would have been possible without the brilliant work of our Deputy Chief of Staff, Alexandra Hayes, whose expertise in international economics and trade policy was instrumental in negotiating this agreement. My parents were in the audience. I saw Mom crying with pride. Dad looked like he was finally seeing me clearly for the first time. After the event, Patrick Brennan approached me. Senator Brennan's father, the man my family had been so desperate to impress. Ms. Hayes, impressive work on this deal. My company is considering expanding our manufacturing operations. I'd like to discuss how your office might facilitate that. I'd be happy to discuss that, Mr. Brennan. Have your team reach out to my office. He shook my hand and walked away. Dad, who'd witnessed the interaction, looked stunned. He came to you, Dad said. Patrick Brennan came to you asking for help. That's how it works, Dad. When you have actual authority, people come to you. They don't need to be impressed, they need what you can provide. That night, at a family dinner celebrating the semiconductor announcement, my family was different. They asked genuine questions about my work. They listened to my answers. They stopped trying to position themselves through me and started genuinely celebrating what I'd accomplished. It wasn't perfect. Years of dismissal and misjudgment couldn't be fixed overnight. But it was real progress. As I drove home that night, I thought about that Thanksgiving when they'd uninvited me to impress a junior senator, while I'd been dining with the governor and the most powerful legislator in the state. They'd valued the appearance of connection over actual influence. They'd chosen proximity to a rising politician over their own daughter who was already in the rooms where decisions were made. But in the end, truth had revealed itself. Not through some dramatic confrontation or public humiliation, but through the simple accumulation of undeniable reality. I hadn't needed to prove them wrong. I just needed to do my work and let the results speak for themselves. That Thanksgiving night, when Dad had frozen seeing me with the governor, wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about clarity. The moment when perception finally aligned with reality. When assumptions collided with truth. When a family that valued the wrong things finally understood what actually mattered. I didn't need their validation anymore. But I was glad they finally saw me. Not because I needed to be seen, but because authentic relationships require authentic recognition. And after 29 years, my family was finally ready to see who I actually was.